mental health is, not only is it not talked about, it's expensive. It's, it's not widely available. It's not widely talked about. I mean, think about what you guys all said, was that, like, either one of two things happened. Either you came to college and we started having conversations about mental health, or you had something happen, in your own life, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe we should start talking about that. So, like, if we never really talk about it and we never really address it, then we don't ever get to a point where we access it. And sometimes, I'm half joking, half serious when I talk to people about, like, one of the biggest reasons I would tell you to take advantage of it while you're, as a college student, and especially as a college student athlete, is like, this is the only time in your life where you can access services for free. Like, the minute before you got here and as soon as you leave, and that cost becomes a barrier to some people. And so I think that's why, I'll use it as a joke, but I'm also serious of, like, this is a good time to talk about these things. And, especially as we create an environment where we drop the stigma and we can have more conversations about things. I wanted to pivot to that idea of stigma, because I know, I think each of you has done some things around our department, in terms of reducing stigma, and wanted to give you guys a little room to talk about just specifically, like, why you think that's important and how we're kind of going about that.
Yeah, so I can kind of start with that. So Kat is also, a major part of Morgan's Message. She was one of the co-founders of Morgan's Message, and kind of a little bit about that is, Morgan's Message is a wonderful tribute to a wonderful person, a friend, a teammate who we lost to suicide about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit over a year and a half ago. And I think, the one thing that we really want to get out of Morgan's Message is making it a place for people to be comfortable, to learn, and to amplify their voice in the community when it comes to destigmatization of mental health in the athletic community, and also just in general in society. And I think we've done a really good job on campus. I know Lexi and Jake are part of Morgan's Message, and they come to meetings, and we try to, have a meeting once a month or twice a month, depending on kind of the workload of people. And right now we're in finals mode, so maybe not having a meeting right around then. And we really work on educating people and trying to make it a space where everyone can come to if they really need something, and making sure everyone here and in Morgan's Message can be an advocate for those who are struggling.
So I think Duke did an awesome job with taking that first step, hiring someone who is a pro in that field for student athletes who need that resource, quite frankly. And that helps in and of itself kind of start to break down that stigma, right? Knowing that you have a safe place to go, knowing that your teammates, your cohorts, other people have that safe place to go, and you have a person to point them to, even if you see something's off, if they mention something. I think in terms of the stigma, I myself struggled my senior fall, and it was really hard for me to come out and kind of tell people about it. I was diagnosed with clinical depression and was put on some meds, and saying that to the team, we kind of had a sit down powwow talk one Friday evening where we kind of just laid ourselves bare, and it was so wonderful, but also so scary. Like, you're your most vulnerable when you're really kind of putting yourself out there. And I remember going into it being like, you know what, I'm just not going to say anything. I don't need to say anything. I'm just going to be treated like I'm Cinderella's glass slipper, right? Like, I could break at any moment. We shouldn't include her in that because she might not be able to handle it. And that was kind of the stigma to me, was like, anyone dealing with their mental health could cry at any moment, could break down, just should be handled with gloves. And so I think our team kind of started to transform that fall in terms of, like, talking about it more. With Morgan, it was not talked about enough. It was not understood enough. And what goes, hand in hand with that stigma is the lack of education around mental health. A lot of people, I feel like, think that people struggling with their mental health, well, they're choosing to act like this, or they're choosing to, this is a very broad generalization, but I think they believe that it's kind of a choice that people who are struggling are making, right, with how they're being reclused, or how they're maybe talking to me today or talking to me differently the next day. And that is just not the case, right? Like, especially those struggling with depression, it's not a choice that, you know, I was making necessarily. It's just how my brain was acting in those times. So, you know, unfortunately, like with Morgan passing, something better came out of it. The stigma still, I mean, I'm sure you guys see it on campus too sometimes. It's probably gotten better, but even when I'm talking to my high school girls I coach, you know, it's hard for them to even say, I'm struggling with anxiety. Like, I had a girl at practice, like, she had an anxiety, like a panic attack, and she didn't want to tell me that she had anxiety issues prior to this, right? Like, she wanted to act like it was a one-off, and I'm very thankful I followed up, because who would have known? You know, it's like I was kind of seeing this like, oh, she can't handle the running. Like, I don't really know what's going on with her. She clearly isn't in shape. And then she was like, no, I've dealt with anxiety most of my life. And she was afraid because of that stigma that I was going to banish her to the bench or whatever. So I think education, first step around destigmatization. I think Morgan's message is, I'm so grateful to be a part of it, because I know it's something I'm super passionate about, and is super passionate about, and is something that's clearly needed. We lose way too many student athletes to suicide, even people, right? Individuals, human beings. And it's something that as a society needs to be tackled head on. Yeah, it's my little spiel on that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it any better than that. Like, I think for me, it was like a personal thing too. Like, I struggle with anxiety. It's something I've struggled with since I was a kid. The difference is it showed up as anger. Like, anxiety can show up as through stress and all these other things. And for me, it showed with anger. So I was always angry. I was a little ball of anger running around in like first and second grade, just terrorizing people. And I got in trouble so much, and they were like, what is wrong? Like, why is she so mad? Like, what's going on? And it wasn't until literally like this summer that I understood like why I was so angry and what was going on. And, you know, the stigma within the Black community of, there are two different types of stigmas. Like, you don't want to be seen as weak. And then also there's this idea of like the strong Black woman. And for me, that's something that's always been taught to me. Like, I need to be strong. I need to support my family. Like, and in whatever way that looks like, there is no space for me to be weak, because society's going to like pounce on it. Like, I will get messed up if I'm, you know, not a strong Black woman. And so, like, that's what my mom taught me, because that's what she was taught, and that's what her grandmother taught her, and that's what her grandmother, like, it is such a generational thing within multiple different communities to be this strong person that it's just taught. And like, all that generational trauma comes with it. And then within my family, like Kat said and like Jake said, like, I'm just now noticing like, oh, that happened because she's depressed. Like, my cousin has depression. That's why she's acting like that, or that's why this is going on. And, you know, my family, I mean, no one in my family is like a therapist, except for my aunt. So no one knows that. Like, we're not taught any of this type of stuff. We don't know what that looks like. We're just saying like, oh, she's acting crazy, or she's being emotional or too sensitive. And those are all things that you don't want to be seen as. So I think for me, it's like a big picture, like helping my family, then helping my community, and then like being a part of Morgan's message, like a way to get educated so that I can help people and make people aware of what's going on. Because I do feel like not only do we lose people to suicide, but we also lose a lot of people to the system. And like, what I mean by that is a lot of kids, especially like low income kids, Black and brown kids, they're put into like juvenile detention centers. They're like, mental health is still kind of like criminalized in a lot of ways, when it should be seen as like something we need to help people with. Like, a lot of kids, like my little cousins, or like someone like my little cousin's friends, like 12 years old, getting arrested for having a mental breakdown in school. And again, it's showing as aggression. And instead of helping these kids and seeing that they're struggling, they just put them in, I don't know, juvenile delinquent centers, that's not what they need. And so I think that's another thing that I've been thinking about a lot, is like, how do we like decriminalize and destigmatize mental health? Again, for me, it's like a big picture thing of like, it affects so many people, even if you don't struggle, like Anna said, even if you're not clinically diagnosed or whatever, it affects you in some way. And if everyone starts to get educated, we can start kind of like chipping down at like the little issues that we see, like me knowing about depression. Maybe I can talk to my cousin today and maybe that can help him tomorrow. Like, might not do a great thing, like might not be like the big save, but like maybe that made him feel a little bit better today, and like that helped him know that he has somebody to talk to.
I think, Duke Athletics has some awesome resources for people. The only issue is, for me, I think a lot of the stuff varies from individual to individual. Like there's no blanket that can cover everything that different people go through on a daily basis. And like Lexi said, I think in addressing that is you just got to educate people to. It's almost like a self-diagnosis. Like, all right, I feel this going on. I've learned this, and this about some mental health, aspects of mental health, and I'm struggling with that a little bit right now. But like, I think that stuff I struggle with is going to be different than my teammate or my classmate, different than what he or she struggled with. So I think that's the only thing that can necessarily be improved upon. Do I have a resolution? No. I wish I did. Sean, I don't know if you do. Pretty smart guy, you might. But that's the only thing I would say could improve a little bit.
Yeah, I would also just say like a way to help destigmatize, like I don't know if it's a solution, it's an idea, but I feel like one of the first steps has to really come from the coaches. Like a lot of the stress that we put on ourselves comes from like what our coaches think about. Like if I take this rep off, like he's going to think I'm weak, like I can't go back in. Or like Anna said, like if I don't play this week, I'm not playing in a game at the end of like on Friday. And I think we all know like sports is like a business and our coaches get paid to be here. And like, again, like Jake said, like their livelihood depends on like how we play and stuff. But I do think like if our coaches make it known that mental health is something they take seriously and have an open door policy, will be understanding. Again, like we said, like it's a business, so like playing time, all that other stuff that comes along with it, that's a variable we can't like kind of control. But it has to start with our coaches so that people aren't like stressing themselves out on the simple fact of like, what does my coach think about me? Like that was my freshman year. Like I had no clue. Like I was so nervous that my coach was gonna think I sucked or I was a bad teammate, a bad player, all this stuff. And it would have just helped to like know. And like now we do talk about this, that like our coach does try and understand my mental health and she does prioritize it, and we do talk about it as a team. Like that's how I feel like a first step, at least for athletes, knowing that our coaches are there for us actually and not just saying it, can hopefully reduce some type of like stress, anxiety, or like the imposter syndrome, like all that type of stuff. Like that could possibly help.
Yeah. And kind of the last thing I'll say to this point is I think a big piece of it is vulnerability. As a junior and kind of as, a budding leader on the team, I think a big piece of destigmatizing mental health is being vulnerable so the younger guys can follow in suit. And I think, if someone else sees you being vulnerable and sees you sharing something about, themselves that they may not walk up to someone that they have just met and tell them that, I think that is a really good place to start to open doors for other people to share things that they may not be comfortable with sharing to other people. And maybe being that person that people feel like they can come to is a big piece of it too.
As a department, the bigger picture is what you guys are hitting on, whether it's Lexi talking about the coaches and Anna talking about each other. Like it also just can't be, of course the psychologist for the department is going to stand up and talk about how important mental health is, right? Like, but when we start getting coaches, when we start getting staff, when we start getting you guys being open to talk about like how important it is and supporting each other and coaches supporting you, then that's systemic change. Like, and that's part of it. And it's just, it's just an athletic department, but it's a start. I think, Lexi, you were talking about like, we got to start somewhere. And I think what we can all do is that. So whether it's within your own individual teams, whether it's, as a department as a whole, but it's got to be everybody. It can't just be like 3 people over here, or, 5 of us sitting on this panel. And it is way more than that. I mean, I don't want to say that, in the department it's not, but it's got to be more than just everybody just, well, if you need something, go see Sean or Alex. Like, no, it's got to be a bigger, how can we all support each other?